The story we have before us this morning is about joy, though it may not seem to be the emphasis of the reading on the face of it. The story begins with being lost and an anxious sheep. Will I ever make it home to safe pasture, or will the wolf get me first? Will I find water before I thirst to death? I am made to be with the flock, but I am so alone and frightened. Those who think they are doing just fine on their own as captain of their own ship and run it quite well without the need of others are deluded. They are, in fact, lost sheep. The kind of freedom some seem to want is an absolute kind of freedom, a desire to do whatever and whenever they want, without regard to the well-being of others, of the country, and may they just be damned. It is not freedom, of course. It is gross, selfish ego at work. This is because all that we call ours is actually a gift from somewhere else. Though we develop our mental, physical, and emotional abilities and aspirations, all else has been given to us as a gift. For the believer, it is from God. For others, it is a gift of the universe. But in either case, it is a gift. We can rightly agree with the psalmist, "It is he who hath made us, and not we ourselves." Everything that we are because of the gift of genetic material we inherited and due to the life struggles that we have come upon on our way. They too are a gift in their own way to help us develop into persons, to give us rocks and obstacles to push against, to develop our spiritual muscles. Those who are deluded into thinking they are responsible and they alone are responsible for their success are in fact lost. As St. Paul wrote, "Those without faith are lost in the futility of their minds. They are genius only in their own mind." This is the situation with the Pharisees and the scribes before us this morning in our reading. They come across as pure in the worst sense of the word. Doctrinally pure as the received traditions of the law in its letter, but not in its spirit. They follow the rules. They are the elite, prudent in their own sight. Now, following the rules is what children are to do. Knowing when to break the rules is the domain of the spiritually alive, such as Jesus, such as those who are under grace. Humanity loses its humanity, its humaneness, when it puts the security of rules ahead of the freedom to live life in all its fullness in faith and trust. The Pharisees and scribes, for all their right living, commit the most grave sin, the sin of pride in their own sanctity, presuming their righteousness is something they own by right of effort. They have put themselves on a high but flimsy pedestal. For righteousness cannot be owned, but occurs when we love others in acts of love. Righteousness must and can only be relational, such as seeking the lost, loving the sinner, sin and all, feeding the hungry because we were once hungry, or lacking the necessities of life, such as refugees fleeing terror in Central American countries experience. When we seek the lost, it is not because there is anything in it for us, but simply because we, at times in our lives, have also been lost. All else is self-interest. There are many ways for us, after all, to go astray and to become lost. Lost in the values of the tribe, be it patriotic at the expense of justice for all, or for religious values and teachings that exclude being the most awful word in the English language. Or we can go into adopt a fatalistic determinism, that existence as we perceive it is only the result of chemical reactions in the brain, or might makes right. We can be lost in the idea that them that have the gold makes the rules, or in political ideologies of the left or right that will not build Jerusalem in this or any other pleasant land. We cannot build it, but she will come down as a gift handmade by God. Whether lost in the sorrow of the loss of a family member, or loss of health or livelihood, of the relationships that we took for granted, lost in anger, habitual anger against those who have wronged us, we are lost. Lost people are those who believe that drinking the poison of our own anger will avenge ourselves on the perceived enemy when we are the ones that will die. Lost are those who believe avoiding our responsibility to welcome others, or that building our lives upon ambition or anything other than the love of others will make for a really real life. Lost people trust in things and tasks. Lost people trust in things and tasks more than relationships. When things and tasks exist only to facilitate the goal, rather building up others in love, is when it's anything other than that, we are lost people. Not ego, not the righteousness of self, is what makes for life in its fullness. In the parable Jesus tells, we are not told why the sheep strayed from the flock or why they became lost. And it really doesn't matter. As mentioned above, there are many ways to become lost, to lose ourselves in the dark forest of our conflicting passions. When we are honest, we know that we are lost. And most of the time, we're just faking it. Anyone who says they have never been lost is lying to him or herself. Witness the situation of the one who now leads this country. Doesn't matter how we became lost. Lost is just lost. But knowing we are lost, not special or especially righteous, is God's opportunity to bring us home and back from our delusions of self-actualization. The prodigal son simply came to his senses. In a sort of simple way, we are lost to God so God can find and bring us home as a lamb carried across his shoulders. There is no censure when the shepherd finds the lost sheep. There is no, "I told you so," or "you better not do this again," or "do this again and I won't come find you." No guilt, no harangue, only rejoicing. And there it is. The rejoicing is what this passage is actually about, in my opinion. It's that when we are lost, it is an opportunity for God to bring us joy in the midst of our anxieties and our lostness. Rejoicing, the result of finding the one who is lost, is how God rejoices. And the self who is found is the joy, experiencing relief, hope, and possibility. There's joy when the epiphany of new life comes upon us. There's the epiphany of when we look into a child's eye and see our own selves reflected, and even if we look deeply enough, the universe itself reflected back to us, alive and living. The prodigal son is not admonished when he returns home. His father, seeing him at a distance, runs out to meet him. And when the son tries to make a speech about how he deserves to be treated badly, the father waves it off, cuts off the excuse mid-sentence, and embraces him. And to the elder son he says, "But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost, but he has been found." And so the father carries the son home, as it were, on his shoulders as a lamb rejoicing. In both the parable of the lost sheep who is returned to the flock and also in the parable of the lost coin found by the woman, there is rejoicing among others in whom she is in relationship with. among family, and there is joy as a result. Pierre de Teilhard de Chardin, the great archaeologist and priest, said long ago, but that saying is still relevant, joy is the infallible sign of the presence of God. Isn't the point of being made whole and saved within the community of humanity and life itself the result of being saved? For this is what the word saved means in its final meaning, is that being made whole, brought home, restored to the relationships from which we were separated. Being saved results in joy, because wherever this is, it is with a deep down sense of the rightness of things, for that is what joy is. I once was lost, but now am found, are the words the lost sheep would sing, would it not, as a result of the shepherd finding the terribly anxious one, having lost its spiritual compass there in the wilderness. It is joy because we know nothing else but are totally lost in the moment, in what is happening, without a sense of self getting in the way of those experiences when God would give us joy. Do we not become so absorbed, and we become so absorbed in the moment of looking deeply, of seeing our beloved as if for the first time, being so focused on the goal that the goal itself becomes all that is, and there is nothing of us separating us from that joy and that fullness of time and that love that is God's. Or perhaps a sense deeper than flesh and bone, that's what joy is, that in this instant, one is being taken out of time and into something, someone, some presence much larger than my puny mortal self. When I acknowledge my own mortality, capacity for selfishness, thinking more highly of myself than of others, then and only then can I be brought back to my senses and saved not from hell, but from the hell of my own pride and self-righteousness that has separated me from God and from others. The scribes and Pharisees had put themselves on a pedestal of sophistication, all tubbed and scrubbed, urbane, socially acceptable, insufferable snobs that they had become. From time to time, others try to put us on pedestals, though it may seem nice at the time, it is a trap. Being put on a pedestal creates an opportunity for others to undercut us and make themselves seem powerful when we make mistakes, commit sins of which we are all mortal and are prone to sin, even priests that they make from time to time. The only pedestal that accomplishes salvation or spiritual wholeness is the pedestal of being a sinner, being mortal, being fallible, being out for ourselves at the expense of others. Any other pedestal we are set up on is death to all that makes us humane. To recognize our own sinfulness or helplessness is the beginning of wisdom. Without experiencing such helplessness, we can never know joy and the preciousness of life, of being found, the preciousness of every person's life. Now, there are many ways for us to go astray and become lost in the values of the tribe, to be patriotic, religious, or adopting determinism. We can become lost in the futility of our own minds and our ideologies. Being lost, paradoxically, leads the sinner to the ultimate good thing, joy in the presence of God, joy of being right with our neighbor, joy of discovering that our vain foolishness is God's opportunity, that those who are fearful or lonely can find in themselves the Christ who is one with us, in, with, and under us, always and forever, without exception. To say, I believe, help my unbelief, is an honest statement of lostness. It seems that it is God's own joy to seek us. For God is the one whose property is always to seek and to find us. And God gives his life as pledge and promise of his determination to do so.